What I hope people see within my work is that it's a bit of a labour of love. This element of time and the passing of time, and it was the same as a painter as well. I'd spend hours and hours and hours painting. It takes a lot of time to create the work. And artists dedicate a lot of time to their practice, and in mine it's a very physical thing. I'd always had an interest in art from a really young age. I remember being in the children's hospital when I was about 6 or 7, and they had loads of art materials, and that was the first time I think I realised that I seemed to have the time that I spent there. I did art every day. I studied at Gray's School of Art and I studied painting, and I graduated in 2007. Well, initially I planned to do a maths degree, and I applied, I was accepted, and then about a month before I was due to start, I decided that it just wasn't what I wanted to do. Now, I'm not really sure what it was that made me change my mind the way that I did, but I'd prepared a portfolio for art school just in case. So I always had it as I knew at the back of my mind, and I think it was probably, I thought I should do something sensible. And I was good at it, but it wasn't what I actually wanted to do. The thing I probably would say I liked most about studying at Gray's was the opportunity to be in a studio amongst lots of other artists, and it's not something I appreciated until I left. It's actually a fairly unique experience where you're maybe in a class of 15 to 20, and every day you can get feedback from each other. I think it is a fairly unique experience, and I remember when I graduated being a little bit lost because you're on your own. When I was studying painting at Gray's, it was all painting at the time, and it was a lot of pattern, a lot of detail, a lot of really vibrant colour. When I did my dissertation at the time, I looked at the idea of chromophobia, which is the fear of colour, and then found that it fed into lots of different aspects of society and not just art, which is interesting because the work that I do now is very white. So at my degree show in 2007, Grampian Hospital's Art Trust bought 2 of my pieces for their permanent collection, and the executive director at the time, Anne Moore, spoke to me about a new project that she'd got funding to set up, and it was called Art Room. And Art Room was to be based on art in hospitals in Glasgow, which they send artists and professional artists into hospital wards to work with patients, staff and visitors. And Anne had got funding to launch a project in Aberdeen, or in Aberdeenshire within NHS Grampian, along the same lines. And after talking to me, she said she thought I might be quite a good candidate.
So she was appointed one of several artists in residence who would work with patients at the end of life to help them with drawing. It wasn't tuition, but it was to draw out creativity in people who perhaps hadn't had the opportunity or the desire to practice art before. So her art and her approach was evident from that time. So her art at that time was painting. She hadn't moved on to paper cutting at the time. And it was very striking because it was primarily pattern based.
That and art room have both been a big part of my career, probably as big a part as my actual work. And certainly, the project has made me look at my work in a different way as well.
Anna's art was very interesting because it was away from representation. Now she can draw, but her art isn't simply about representation of things in nature or things that you see. So it was quite interesting from that point of view.
I did my Master of Fine Arts in 2009 and 2010, and that was when I started looking at the idea of beauty versus ugly, which it was a kind of concept I'd been thinking about for a while because my previous work was very decorative to some. I then started to look at different artists, the likes of Jim Lambie, who used architectural spaces and created work that's, it's bright, it's fun, but actually there's quite a lot to think about. Richard Wright as well, who kind of takes on a similar idea, but his work tends to be like wall based usually. There can be a crack in the wall and in every pattern he uses stems from that crack. So the work is can be created around imperfections. And that was where I started to look, or when I started to look at this idea of like, could my work be used to hopefully encourage people to reconsider what a space is used for. So, taking areas in the city that would normally be deemed ugly by people, installing a piece of work that most people in a gallery setting would say, oh, that's beautiful because it's highly detailed and there's a lot of pattern in it, and kind of does that change the space? And if you take it and you put it into a space that people would normally completely overlook.
The effect it has on you, it's somewhat different from simply looking at a picture. You can stand there and see what it does for you, and that to me is a key feature of good modern art, that you don't just drift past it, but it arrests your attention, and as you look at it you see more and more. And is it just a pretty pattern, or is there something else? Is there an emotional affect from what she's done?
I remember being at Union Terrace Gardens under the arches, and like lots of people who were just out maybe walking their dogs, or and some of the council workers as well were just what are you doing, and then explaining like the project to them and explaining the work to them. And a few people commented that they would normally just walk past there and not give it a second look, but actually they'd realised they'd looked a lot more at like, oh, what kind of view do you get from there, how's the space actually made up, how's it formed.
The other thing is, plainly it's very accomplished, and the craftsmanship of it is very high. And I like craft too, about any manual skills, and I like the fact that manual skills are part of what I would consider good art. It's not slapdash, it's not just happening by chance. And in that end you can do it. So even something that is just a brushstroke on a page, piece of paper or canvas, doesn't happen by chance. It may be spontaneous, but that spontaneity, there is more to it than simply chance.
I think the idea that art is something that you have a finished product, it's something you own, is something that's preserved. I guess the work that I do now challenges that, because it's very much a kind of moment in time. It's installed in a location for a specific time, the documentation's what's left of it. So I guess the memory is the art as well. It's different to having a finished product, if you like, where you hang it on a wall and that's the art. I think it's quite a powerful thing that it's the memory of the work that is the piece of art, in a sense. When I was creating this work, it was interesting to be in a position where I knew I was going to be installing it somewhere where I could have all day, every day to document it and film it. Whereas normally I would be in a situation where I'm like, right, I'm installing it in this location and I've got an hour and I'll need to make sure that I document it properly then, because I might not get a second chance to do it. I spent a lot of time before I even created the work, like studying the light at different times of the day and how the sun moved and what impact that would have in the cutout, what it would be like if it was really windy as well, which is obviously a factor in this part of the country. The photographs of it are just, you maybe have the very bottom of the cutout, but it's mainly the shadow that kind of became the art. We got one really good day, and that was when I was and the next few days it was pouring rain, so it kind of meant that it wasn't an option to be able to do it again. So it was very much, it captured a bit of a fleeting moment in time. It's just how I responded to the COVID situation and how my work changed because of it. It gave me an opportunity to work in a different way to how I would normally work, which I guess is maybe the positive in this. It takes a lot of time to create the work, and that was the part of the reason that I made the time-lapse videos to go along with the work that I was submitting this year, because actually the process was as important as the work itself, and that's why the project ended up being called Process, because it was the actual journey. Art rooms definitely made me appreciate that everyone can be an artist, and lots of people think because they can't draw or can't paint in the way that they think they should be able to, that they're just no good at art. It's amazing to see what people can achieve. People who, like I say, they may have lost the use of their hands, or they might not. We've worked with people who are blind, we've found ways to help them create work, and people who just can't believe that they've got this talent and they didn't know that they had it. Our role is to bring that out and help them to discover it. I mean, we're facilitators. As a patient in a hospital, a lot feel like they've lost their ability to choose. Sometimes for people who are in long term, the only thing they're choosing each day is what they want off the menu for their meals. Sometimes for people it is just that, they want to pick a colour or a material to use, but it's their choice. It's up to them what they want to create, and I think that's probably one of the most powerful parts of Art Room, is that it gives people an element of choice back. It gives them an element, it gives them the control back, and it builds their confidence through that as well, which I think is a really important part of Art Room. Other projects I've worked on have been one in particular that has played an important part for me over the past couple of years has been working with creative learning on it's creativity writing in the great outdoors, where artists are sent in to work with classes at schools. You're allocated a teacher in a class for a term. The goal of the project was to see if creativity could increase the reading and writing or literacy for children in schools, and to look at whether art could be used, or creativity could be used to make a difference. It's been a really successful project where it's not just their literacy that's improved, it's been different aspects. One class that I worked with last year who they decided they came up with a story, they'd made a play, and they wanted to build all their props from cardboard. One took on the role of like showing everyone how to create the props and how to measure it out, and you know, the teacher was commenting that that child doesn't normally have an interest in maths, but actually because it was just presented in a completely different way to them, he realised that actually this child was, you know, really good at maths but really interested in it as well. It was just finding a different way in. And I think that's been the interesting thing with that project, that as well as, you know, the children were working really well together, they were working as a team, and they were really proud as well of what they were doing, and they really took ownership, which I guess it just shows that creativity can be quite powerful in those settings. I've worked in collaboration with a few different creatives over the years. It hasn't always been with artists. There was a project I worked on in 2015 with Cast Dance Company, which they were City Move's in-house dance company at the time, and we worked with a set of dancers, or a group of dancers. They created a piece based around what they, you know, the inspiration they took from my work, and I created work that based around the dancers. So we worked hand in hand to create a piece that was performed at the Barn in Bankery. And also one of my collaborations, I was commissioned by GAT to work with another artist, Rachel Barron, who's based in Sweden now. We worked in the Sutty art space to create a piece that was, again, responded to the gallery. The work was created for the physical space and the form of the gallery. It's interesting to collaborate. There's quite a lot of things to consider. Artists often work in different ways to the way you do. So you've got to be able to be, or willing to be, flexible, and it makes you reconsider your own practice as well. I first exhibited with Aberdeen Artists Society, I think it was 2005. I was in my third year at Gray's, and I entered the open exhibition and got in, and I was lucky to be accepted for quite a few years, and at that point it was probably the biggest event in the art calendar in Aberdeen. There wasn't really an awful lot else at the time going on back then. I'd planned to submit work for it reopening this year, and then obviously due to COVID it wasn't going to be held in the art gallery, which actually gave me a chance to create work that was kind of based on my experience of lockdown, which was interesting because I would never have had that chance if the exhibition had been held in the art gallery. I wouldn't have had that chance, and actually what came out of it was probably one of the best pieces I've done. I think the Aberdeen Artists Society exhibition, it's well respected. It's good to be able to say that you were accepted, you've displayed work there. And in terms of the annual exhibition, it would be great if there was maybe a section for emerging artists, or maybe even an award for emerging artists that to kind of help launch their careers. But also, if outside of the annual exhibition, maybe if there were events, like maybe workshops that run throughout the year relating to the society. Aberdeen has been home since 2003 for me, when I moved here to study at art school. It's kind of a bit of a love-hate relationship. At times it's felt like it's in previous years, like there's not always an awful lot going on for artists in Aberdeen. I mean, when I graduated, most people who were continuing to practice moved to Glasgow, Edinburgh, London, some went abroad. It's been good in recent years to see that there's a lot more, and there is a lot more opportunities for artists in Aberdeen. And it's good, I think, in recent years. I think you're seeing a lot more artists sticking around in Aberdeen because there are more opportunities than there were. we've obviously got the new arts gallery, which is great, and I mean I think it was sorely missed for the years that it was closed. For the most part, there is a lot going on, and so I guess it's just, if it was on a bigger scale each year, if there was more money invested into the arts in Aberdeen, then it would only grow from there. As an artist with a young family, I mean my children are 2 and 4, it's definitely challenging this year because of COVID. It's been a bit more challenging, where for 6 months I had both children at home while I was working, and I had to really rethink how I create my work, especially because I use scalpels within my work. Obviously I couldn't have them just lying around, so I had to rethink, well, when do I actually create my work? In my case it was in the evenings once they were in bed, so I had to really make a plan around them. I mean, it knocked everything on its head for a while. I'm sure most people with young children can probably relate to that. My greatest achievement so far probably be the Royal Scottish Academy Awards I won when I was at Gray's. They were, I was very fortunate to win those, and I got a lot of opportunities, residencies and such like, and exhibition opportunities that came from winning those awards. And it's definitely, there's something that I'm, proud of. I've had to adapt my practice, especially this year, to fit the, ever-changing times that we're living in at the moment, but proud that I've managed to find a way to work that works for me as an artist. It'll be interesting to see what kind of art I'm creating in 40 years' time. I feel like it's already turned in a new direction, through film and through sound, and it'll be interesting to see just where it goes next. I don't think it'll be traditional art in the, painting on canvas kind of sense. I'm not sure where it'll go, and if this will probably, if this might just continually evolve. And a few years ago I never would have seen my work going in this direction. So it's always interesting to see, where it goes next, and just being open to change. If my children said they wanted to go to art school, I'd say go for it. I think you need to do what you want to do. It's hard work, but if you are passionate about it, then it will only end well.